Hello everyone, this is Crypto BitLaw, and today we're going to be doing an in-depth analysis on this story that I find rather fascinating that I recently became aware of, and I wanted to share with you fine people. And this is going to have to deal with whether Russia and Iran are evading US sanctions using Tether. And I think crypto more broadly, but Tether in particular. And so we're going to do a deep dive into this and kind of hash out all of the different moving pieces and see if we can't, unearth some sort of overarching theme and get down to what the heck's actually going on with this situation. But before we dive in, if you like this content, please smash that like button, as they say so often on YouTube, and please also subscribe to our channel. That would really help us out as we're seeking to grow and share this content with even more people on the interwebs. So with that said, let's dive right on in. All right, so it all starts here with a series of tweets that I recently came across, and a lot of it has to deal with this situation that's currently playing out with Ukraine and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and a lot of people speculating about whether or not one of the hidden agendas behind all of this was for Russia to start using crypto as some sort of alternative payment means to reconcile payments in crypto or Bitcoin or even Tether in the event that they were kicked off of the SWIFT system, which is a global settlement system between all of these major central banks from country to country. And recently, today, it just so happened that as part of the United States' sanction package against Russia for invading Ukraine, they were kicked off of the SWIFT system, that is Russia. So tying it back into where we are with these tweets, we can see right here, there was this tweet on the 24th from this guy, DB, and he said, I really don't understand how people think it would be bullish for Russia to use crypto if they were to be kicked off SWIFT. Russia evading sanctions using Bitcoin would not make the regulators happy. True, right? But then this guy, Bitfinex, who's got a really interesting account. You should check out some of his stuff. Really good stuff that this guy's posting. He responds and he says, well, the Iranians are using Tether and meeting with Giancarlo Divasini in person to discuss using Tether to evade U.S. sanctions. Why not Russia too? And then he continues on, oh, wait, I totally forgot to provide the proof. And then he provides a series of screenshots that he asserts are the receipts for his. So this got me thinking, it makes total sense. If this guy, he's able to connect, the Iranians having a history of trying to leverage crypto in order to evade U.S. sanctions or Western sanctions, it would totally make sense for the Russians to try to do that as well, especially considering everything that's been going on with this whole Ukraine invasion and all the sanctions that are currently being levied at the Russians and affecting the Russian economy. I know that recently the ruble has just pretty much plummeted in their stock market. The Russian stock market has just taken quite a hit recently. So let's dive deeper into these receipts that this guy provided. All right, so starting off, we have this tweet from CITEX Co., which was translated from Persian, and we could say right here the most important parts are: yesterday, at a special meeting, members of the host company FICAS in Switzerland, Giancarlo Divasini, founder of Bitfinex and Tetra, USDT, I'm assuming that's Tether, Silvano Di Stefano was also Tetra's chief information officer, a friendly chat about great ideas. So let's see who these people are. I think CITEX Co., as we could see over here, they claim to be a communication and IT expansion company. They're based out of Iran, right? And as we could see here, they say they try to bring together teams of professionals and hardworking people, yada, yada, yada. They use the latest technology for future nations. Iranians use the latest tools, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, so on and so forth. Just kind of typical, boilerplate style language that you'd see from, your average technology company. Here's a copy of their Twitter. Also based out of Iran, right? And some more things that they've been tweeting. Okay, and so let's see who these other two are. Giancarlo Divasini and Silvano Di Stefano, who I'm assuming are here in these pictures right here. Over here we could see that Giancarlo, he signs himself as Merlin the Wizard. He was or I don't know if he still is, the executive, chief financial officer of Bitfinex, one of the major crypto exchange platforms in the world, and the director of Tether Limited, which issues Tether, the crypto that's pegged to the dollar, right? And so then we also have Silvano Di Stefano, Tether's chief investment officer. So these guys, well, I guess he was also an Italian banker. But essentially, I mean, these guys are some of the principals that are involved with and masterminds behind Tether, right? So these guys are 100% involved with everything that is Tether. Okay, so now that we've gone through that, let's see. Next up, this guy has a series of screenshots which seem to have been taken from an article that was written. So we can see here the title of the article is Iranian Cryptocurrency Entrepreneur Looks to Operating Through Zug, right? And there's a series of these that are all sequences of screenshots that encapsulate this article. So doing a little bit of research, we were able to unearth that article. And it's right here. It was published on this website, Zug for You, which seems to be a promotional website for this region of Switzerland called Zug. Looking over here, we can see that Zug, here's a excerpt from this website, Zug for You. Zug, the gem of central Switzerland. The pristine canton of Zug is located in central Switzerland. It boasts an ideal combination of low tax rates, a well-educated population, and rapid access to other major Swiss cities such as Lucerne and Zurich. This makes Zug a small but very international community. As a result of many multinational companies selecting Zug as their headquarters, comparatively, many expats live here as opposed to other cities. To make your move as smoothly as possible, zugforyou.ch provides a wealth of useful resources in English, right? And so, I mean, I think it's painfully obvious what's going on here. People, more so than just people, a lot of these corporate entities, these business entities, choose these places, Zug, Zurich, Lucerne, so on and so forth, due in large part for the fact that they're tax havens and they can operate outside of the traditional bounds of Western jurisdictions like the United States or any of the Five Eyes or any other, Western entities that would otherwise be opposed to or serve as any sort of threat to somewhat nefarious operations, right? And so that's pretty much the lowdown on what Zug is. And so turning back to this article over here, we could see it's the same article. It was published in 2019. Here's the title again. Iranian cryptocurrency entrepreneur looks to operating through Zug. So let's read through this because it seems like it's pretty important. All right, so we can see it says, Iranian cryptocurrency entrepreneur looks to operating through Zug. It's widely known that Zug is a magnet when it comes to companies setting up businesses relating to cryptocurrencies. What is less well known is that Iranian companies are also looking to the canton as a location from where they can operate. With Iran and companies trading with it facing tough U.S. sanctions, it is not easy. God, I can't believe these people are promoting this. Okay. Let me collect myself. With Iran and companies trading with it facing tough U.S. sanctions, it is not easy for Iranian companies to set up firms here, the banks having had their hands tied. However, an alternative option to pay for the setting up of a company in Zug is possible in the canton by paying through assets in kind, i.e. through cryptocurrencies. Wow. Oh my lord. I mean, how more brazen can you get? I mean, wow. Okay, let's keep rolling on. One Iranian player in this field is Ali Mizani Askoui. He is reportedly highly intelligent and even foresaw the fall in price of Bitcoin last year. In fact, he uses his expertise in business in his job, offering asset management with cryptocurrencies based on his algorithms. On his homepage, the Iranian financial expert says he believes neither in racial barriers nor in political boundaries and has no time for religious intolerance and prejudice. Okay, seems pretty progressive. Apparently, the 44-year-old is already successful in offering his services in his homeland, but wants to expand abroad. Though, with sanctions in place, this is not easy. Helping Mizani Askoui in his venture is Cedric Schmid. Photograph. I don't know where the photograph is. the new leader of the FDP party in the city of Zug, himself a fiduciary agent currently advising a number of companies involved in cryptocurrencies. In looking for somewhere beyond Iranian borders to set up a company, Mizani Asqui turned to Switzerland, though with a minimum CHF 100,000 needed to set up an AG company. I'm assuming those are Swiss francs. Okay, just did a double check on that, and yes, CHF is the Swiss franc. So, with a minimum CHF of 100,000 needed to set up an AG company, and that's kind of like the foreign equivalent. I know in Germany they use an AG. It's like one of their forms of business entities instead of an incorporation or corporation or an LLC, limited liability company. They use an AG. And let's see what that. Okay, let's see.
Aktiengesellschaft.
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 Aktiengesellschaft. That is their version of one of these business entities. Okay, enough of that. Let's get back to it. Okay, so yeah, minimum 100,000 francs to set up an AG. This was not easy for him. Not easy. Okay, he sought assistance from 10 Swiss banks without success, no doubt as a result of U.S. sanctions, Schmid feels. Switzerland also imposes certain sanctions on Iran, but there is no law which states that Iranian companies cannot open accounts here. While this may be the case on paper, in reality, U.S. sanctions are taken into consideration in this area and implemented worldwide, as one representative of a large Swiss bank said. Schmid feels this is wrong. Surely this is not right for so many obstacles to be placed in front of an Iranian to invest here when it has been proved he has earned his money, clean money too, himself. Okay, buddy. Yeah, sure, clean money, huh? Adding that Switzerland should stand up to the USA in such matters. After all, we are one of the biggest investors in the States, he insisted. Hence, Mizani Asqui sought assistance from Schmid, who felt that the Iranians' business was so exciting it belonged to Crypto Valley. And as Schmid further explained, since September of 2017, it has been possible for companies dealing in cryptocurrencies to set them up through payment in kind, something the FDP party leader pushed for. Statistics provided by the Cantonal Registry of Companies shows that this has been the case in as many as 100 companies. Schmid is also being supported in this role by the DCOM Switzerland GmbH company, which operates from Ballwil and Suri, both in the canton of Lucerne, and which is active in the same sector as Mizani Asqui, offering advice on investing in cryptocurrencies and managing assets held in them. Marcel Niedberger, a partner there, said the company had extended its services to opening an escrow account in the cryptocurrency Ethereum as payment for a necessary deposit required, enabling the subsequent issuance of the necessary capital payment certificate required to ensure public registration. With the value of cryptocurrencies fluctuating strongly as they do, Mizani Asqui actually paid Ethereum 1234.8, so at the time it was 1234.8 Ethereum or 130,000 Swiss francs as the deposit for the registration of his Ficus AG company. This amount being the value of Ethereum in Swiss franc terms at the time of registration. Another advantage Niederberger pointed out was that DCOM Switzerland was the subject to a self-regulating organization only. Of course, we have to check exactly what sort of money we are getting, he said, which indicates how serious our partners take all this. As Schmid further pointed out, it was not just businessmen from countries subject to sanctions who encountered problems setting up accounts. Banks made it difficult for any startup companies dealing in cryptocurrencies and blockchain or financed through foreign money to do the same. The reason, he felt, was that banks lacked the specialist knowledge needed in this sector and were unwilling to get involved in something they did not understand. Now the FDP politician is looking to increase demand from companies dealing in cryptocurrencies for the services he can offer. Okay, well, that was a lot to take in and very enlightening. I certainly learned a fair amount from that. I mean, pretty much from what I took from this is that, hey, there could be sanctions on people from the United States and all these other Western companies, and while certain places aren't willing to play ball with them, we here at Zug, we are. You can come here. We looked at you. Your money seems like it's clean. We'll take it. That's the impression that I got from this, and it's almost kind of how shocking some of this, like how brazen some of this article was, right? I just, shocking. It's shocking. All right, so let's dig into this Bloomberg article that was also cited in some of those tweets from Bitfinex that have to deal with Tether and why it is at the center of a lot of U.S. government, particularly the DOJ's. It's the focal point of a lot of investigations regarding AML, anti-money laundering violations. And so the article states that Tether executives are said to face criminal probe into bank fraud. The DOJ is examining whether banks were misled about crypto businesses. Tether says it's committed to cooperating with law enforcement. So it says in large part, now we're just going to kind of cherry pick some of the more interesting and relevant parts from this article. I know that in the article they do a deeper dive into what Tether is. You know, if you're watching this, you should already probably know that Tether's a stable coin and know what a stable coin is and why they exist, so on and so forth. But I mean, if you want to see the whole thing, we're going to link this down in the description below. But continuing on, they say a U.S. probe into Tether is homing in on whether executives behind the digital token committed bank fraud, a potential criminal case that would have broad implications for the cryptocurrency market. The Justice Department investigation is focused on conduct that occurred years ago when Tether was in its more nascent stages. Specifically, federal prosecutors are scrutinizing whether Tether concealed from banks that transactions were linked to crypto, said 3 people with direct knowledge of the matter who asked not to be named because the probe is confidential. All right, it continues. The U.S. Treasury Department and Federal Reserve are among agencies concerned that the tokens could threaten financial stability. That is, Tether and these stablecoin tokens, primarily Tether, and are obscuring transactions tied to money laundering and other misconduct because they allow criminals to make payments without going through the regulated banking system. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said last week that watchdogs must act quickly in considering new rules for stablecoins. But Tether's corporate side still needed banks to hold its money and process customer transactions. One early relationship that soured was with Wells Fargo and Company. In 2017, the Tether Limited affiliate and Bitfinex, a cryptocurrency exchange with common owners and executives, sued Wells Fargo for blocking wire transfers that had been sought through Taiwanese banks. In the lawsuit, Tether and Bitfinex said Wells Fargo knew or should have known that the transactions were being used to obtain U.S. dollars so clients could purchase digital tokens. The companies dropped the case shortly after filing it. Whether Wells Fargo declined to comment. In the course of its years-long investigation, the Justice Department has examined whether traders used Tether tokens to illegally drive up Bitcoin during an epic rally for cryptocurrencies in 2017. While it's unclear whether Tether, the company, was a target of that earlier review, the current focus on bank fraud suggests prosecutors may have moved on from pursuing a case tied to market manipulation. Tether has already drawn the ire of regulators. In February, Bitfinex and several Tether affiliates agreed to pay $18.5 million to settle claims from the New York Attorney General Leetta James that firms hid losses and lied that each token was supported by $1 US. The companies had no access to banking in 2017, making it impossible that they have reserves backing the tokens, James said. The firms settled without admitting or denying the allegations. So, I mean, that's going to tie into points that are going to come up in just a little bit about what is actually backing these things and new developments that have come out with regards to that, you know, what's actually backing Tether. Another point that's worthwhile and interesting of note is the fact that Tether I think it is likely it is used in order to illegally drive Bitcoin and other crypto markets in a form of coordinated manipulation. And this is part and parcel to why we have not yet seen the approval of a Bitcoin ETF. Because Gary Gensler, smart cookie he is, he knows this, right? He knows what's going on with Tether, how it's tied to all these different exchanges, how it's just pretty much an unlimited, unregulated money printer that just prints out new Tether all willy-nilly without anything backing it. Kind of like the Fed does with the dollar, but at least they have the full faith and credit of the United States behind it. Tether, where's your government? Where's your country? Right? And that's one of the issues with a lot of these U.S. regulators and Tether, as it pertains to market manipulation related back to the spot Bitcoin ETF, right? And so this is an interesting tie-in, a good segue to what is going to be talked about soon. So with that said, let's move on to the next points. Okay, moving along, we could see here was another tweet from February 22nd, where it states that it's probably nothing. Tether is definitely under SEC investigation. And there's a series of screenshots. One of them, it's other information about litigation. This doesn't really have anything of note that we can relate back. Here is a series of docket entries from the Southern District of New York with some case numbers regarding cases involving Tether and Bitfinex, which we'll do a little deeper dive into in a little bit. But then right here, this is really interesting. Someone submitted a FOIA request to the SEC, and pretty much what the SEC responded back. We could see here the individual requested access to all documents, emails, memos, and reports related to or mentioning Tether. And then the SEC responded back that they are withholding records that may be responsive to the requests because the exemption protects from disclosure records compiled for law enforcement purposes, the release of which could reasonably be expected to interfere with enforcement activities, right? So, I mean, if you construe that as I construe it, I think that there is an active investigation going on with the SEC looking into Tether. And so, back to this point of the Southern District of New York cases, it seems that there was this civil litigation that involves Tether and Bitfinex and crypto asset litigation, and plaintiffs are alleging that Tether was a fraudulently issued crypto asset, pretty much a market manipulation, creating a bubble. If you want to, there are RICO claims against them here, racketeering. I mean, violations of tort and fraud, all of which, I mean, knowing the more that I learn about Tether, it seems that, I mean, this isn't really... it's really not that far of a stretch to allege these things and see them actually play out. I mean, if you want to read this entire document, it's going to be linked down in the description below. But ultimately, the court, in their order, they granted some... It was granted in part and denied in part. They dismissed some of the counts. They allowed some of them to go through. They denied something for a motion to dismiss for lack of personal jurisdiction. And I think they ordered the... Where was the order? Yeah, they ordered the defendants to answer an amended complaint by October 28th of 2021. We can go check the docket and see what was going on here. But, I mean, just know that what this is representative of is the larger macro level issues. The fact that it's not just... three-letter agencies like the DOJ and the FBI and regulators like the SEC looking into Tether. It is also individuals involved in civil litigation that are going after Tether for a lot of the shady dealings that they're involved in. And, here we can see some of our favorite names again, Giancarlo Devasini, so on and so forth. So... this is just all part and parcel for a lot of the shading dealings that Tether is and has been involved in. Okay, so we did a little bit into Tether. We kind of know of what their shady past is, what their shady dealings have been. They're being investigated by three-letter agencies, regulators, and sued by individuals. We linked in the Iranians, right, with Tether, through this meeting and that shell company that's operating in Switzerland and Zug and so on and so forth. Now let's tie back in the Russians, right? And so we have this Chainalysis report right here, the title of which is Chainalysis in Action, OFAC Sanctions, Russian Cryptocurrency Over-the-Counter Exchange CITEX that received over $160 million from ransomware attackers, scammers, and darknet markets. Okay, so we're just going to kind of touch on a lot of the major points in this. If you want to see the entire report. It's going to be linked down in the description below. We're just going to, parse out the relevant portions for the sake of clarity and efficiency. So it says in pertinent part, today, the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, or the OFAC, announced that Russia-based cryptocurrency over-the-counter broker, OTC broker, CITEX, was designated pursuant to Executive Order 13694 and added to the Specially Designated Nationals and Blocked Persons SDN list, thereby prohibiting Americans from doing business with the company. We are proud to share that Chainalysis tools aided in the investigation of CITEX. Today's designation is important because it represents significant action taken by the U.S. government to combat money launderers who make all other forms of cryptocurrency-based crime profitable. And as we discussed in our most recent crypto crime report, a very small group of illicit services facilitates the majority of money laundering for all cryptocurrency-based crime. CITEX is one of the biggest and most active of those services. Shutting them down would represent a significant blow to many of the biggest cyber threat actors operating today, including leading ransomware attackers, scammers, and darknet market operators. Who is CITEX? CITEX is a cryptocurrency OTC broker legally registered in the Czech Republic. However, it has no known physical presence there and instead operates out of branch offices in Moscow and St. Petersburg, as well as other locales in and around Russia and in the Middle East. Two for one. CITEX. Russia and the Middle East, you don't say, huh? CITEX claims it can convert cryptocurrency holdings into cash at these branch locations and even facilitate the exchange of cryptocurrency for physical assets like real estate, cars, and yachts. All right, so now we see that here, this is one of the major tie-ins to the Russians, which, this place even has, footprints in the Middle East as well. And so we could see a lot of the AML, anti-money laundering, regulation violations tied into activities that are happening in Russia and the Middle East, right? Which is part and parcel to our earlier point about how the Russians and the Iranians in the Middle East are using these things, certain digital assets, in particular things like Tether, to evade U.S. sanctions and evade AML, anti-money laundering regulations, and KYC, know your customer regulations. So this is the darker side of crypto and digital assets, things that the United States and a lot of the West are trying to eke out, which I think is probably more pertinent now than ever, due in large part to what is happening in Ukraine. It's front and center because with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the fact that the Russians are being sanctioned left and right by a lot of these Western countries and were just kicked out of the SWIFT payment network, they're going to want some sort of alternative means with which to transfer funds and, I guess, operate unbanked. All right, so let's do a little deeper dive into what's actually backing Tether and the most recent information regarding what's actually held in Tether's treasury on reserve and what's actually supposed to be backing this thing one for one and pegging it to the dollar. And as we can see this headline from Decrypt, it states latest Tether figures show 21% decrease in commercial paper. The subheadline is Tether's latest quarterly assurance opinion shows a 21% decrease in commercial paper holdings over the last quarter. And, they go into this whole, general overview of, we did a deeper dive into this Tether report, and this is the headline that they came up with, which I think is a bit misleading, because when you actually go to the report right here, we could see that here's the report, and it states that Tether Holdings Limited made available its quarterly assurance opinion, demonstrating that the group's consolidated assets exceeded its consolidated liabilities and shows a 21% decrease in commercial paper holdings over the prior quarter. And then we get to the juicier part. It says the attestation completed by MHA Cayman affirms the accuracy of Tether's consolidated reserve reports, right? And so this is an attestation which was completed by a firm based out of the Cayman Islands, all right? So, if that's not sketchy enough, right? Grand Cayman, here's the report. We're going to link this down in the description below, but we're going to do a deeper dive and see, okay, what are these, quote, attestations and how they don't really cut it. It's not the same as an audit, and how whenever they actually need to print more of this magic funny money, this Tether, how they actually go about doing that, right? So let's do a deeper dive. All right, so back here to our friend Bitfinex. He stated on February 22nd, why does Tether use attestations instead of audits? Because they can cheat the attestations, which I agree with. I mean, you've got your own paid firm running all your books, pretty much doing and cooking your data in the way that you tell them to, because you're the one cutting their paychecks. Of course, they're going to put down what you want them to put down. This isn't really a bona fide audit. It continues on that the assurance opinions exclude everything before the exact minute. Tether knows when the attestation takes place and can set the table temporarily, just like they've done previously. And here we could see another series of screenshots. This one states that the Tether reserves were not audited. No audit of the Tether reserves occurred during the relevant period. And these were screenshots. Let's see, the other one. This is from the actual attestation. The reporting date is limited to a point in time. And so, yeah, they timed it down to the exact minute, as he showed. Here's another interesting point of note regarding the attestation. It states, does Tether's new attestation give you a warm and fuzzy feeling? Here why it shouldn't. They played games with the attestation, and this is based on the Attorney General's investigation about how they claimed to have backed each Tether in circulation at the rate of $1 for every Tether, but contrary to its representations on whether or not they actually held sufficient funds, Tether published a self-proclaimed verification of its cash reserves in 2017 that it characterized as a good faith effort to provide an interim analysis of the cash position. In reality, the cash ostensibly backing Tethers had been placed in Tether's account as of the very morning of the company's verification. It continues on that Tethers were fully backed by cash at $1 for every Tether. This was according to what they stated. However, the very next day, after this report, Tether began to transfer funds out of its account, ultimately moving hundreds of millions of dollars from Tether's bank accounts to Bitfinex accounts. And so, as of November 2nd, 2018, one day after their latest verification, Tethers were again no longer backed one-to-one by US dollars in a Tether bank account. So they're playing these games with the Tether, and that's what the OAG ultimately eked out when they were doing their investigation. Here's another interesting point of note about the attestation. The auditor that just released this current attestation, which isn't really an audit, they're actually under investigation for bad auditing. And as we can see here, the receipts for that. So, I mean, that should kind of raise some red flags. Here again, we can see attestation isn't an audit. Tether has repeatedly lied about the reserves and backing of Tether, and the New York Attorney General informed everybody about this racket, and people still believe Tether, which I certainly don't. And then here's some more screenshots. Here's Peter Schiff. Even this guy, even Boomer over here is onto the Tether racket. There's no actual reserves backing this thing. And then another point of note about how Bitfinex and Tether recklessly and unlawfully covered up massive financial losses to keep their scheme going to protect their bottom lines, according to Attorney General James. Tether's claims that its virtual currency was fully backed by US dollars at all times was a lie. The companies obscured the true risk investors face and were operated by unlicensed and unregulated individuals and entities dealing in the darkest corners of the financial system, which we've kind of touched on a little bit earlier. And here's another interesting point that I was really kind of taken aback by, where Bitfinex points out that back in November 2017, a Bitfinex employee accidentally admitted how Tethers are issued. When Tether needs money for an attestation, they simply sell the Bitcoin they bought with the funny money. September 15th, 2017, September 2017 crash wasn't China FUD. And then they point to some screenshots of these exchanges that occurred on Reddit about points in time where Tether was printed and the relationship to the market, and then a chart with certain events based on, I guess certain pumps and dumps on when Tether was audited and ultimately printed more Tether, and the relationship to the market based on all of those events. And so I think that, they're really onto something here with the fact that this is the manipulation, selling the Bitcoin and dumping the Bitcoin that was actually purchased with this money that they just
print up out of thin air.
All right, so connecting this back to Ukraine, we have a series of developments regarding crypto funneling into Ukraine. And here we can see that Ukraine's Ministry of Defense is unable to accept crypto donations. And the Ukraine Ministry of Defense set up a bank account for foreign donations, but Bitcoin is legally not acceptable. So many have expressed a desire to help Ukraine in the midst of the Russian invasion. And while the Ministry of Defense set up a bank account specifically for foreign cryptocurrency donations, it is legally unable to accept crypto donations. And crypto's potential use as a vehicle for donations has perhaps seemed more clear in the recent weeks. They say, following Russia's incursion into Ukraine, many have expressed an interest in donating to the nation's defense efforts. However, the Ministry of Defense is barred legally from accepting cryptos. While the Ukraine is enduring a foreign invasion from Russian military forces, the Ministry of Defense in Ukraine has received an influx of inquiries from foreigners wishing to donate. Due to, quote, national legislation, though, Ukraine's Ministry of Defense is unable to accept alternative payment systems like Bitcoin or PayPal. With that said, the Ministry of Defense did open up a bank account dedicated to using foreign currency donations due to, quote, numerous requests from individuals and legal entities who are not residents of Ukraine who wish to donate. The donations support the armed forces of Ukraine, according to the Ministry of Defense, in terms of both logistical and medical support. It also states that the possible advantages crypto affords for donations have appeared clearer in recent weeks. Specifically to Ukraine, digital fiat money's issuance was suspended, and this was a couple days ago, in Ukraine following President Volodymyr Zelensky's imposition of martial law. And here, as we can see as a corollary to that, Ukraine's defense and hacktivist groups have raised over $4 million in crypto. Russia's invasion into the country sparked a surge of crypto donations to resistance groups. So these are alternative groups that aren't directly affiliated with the government but operate independently, whether paramilitary groups or hacktivist groups. And this article states, in pertinent part, that cryptocurrency payments to military and hacktivist groups in Ukraine aimed at countering Russian aggression against the country rose sharply in the second half of 2021, according to cryptocurrency tracing and blockchain analysis firm Liptic. Payments to Ukrainian war effort organizations or even pro-Ukrainian hacktivists aren't necessarily illegal or in violation of any sanctions, but donations to those groups have nonetheless been frozen or banned by some payment platforms. Patreon, for instance, suspended a page for Come Back Alive this week, citing a policy against campaigns that involve violence or purchasing military equipment. That suspension denied $250,000 in funding that had been earmarked to support Ukraine's defenses, according to a message the group posted on Facebook. Cryptocurrency exchanges that convert donated Bitcoin into dollars or Ukrainian hryvnia, on the other hand, are often far less closely regulated. And Elliptic's, one of the individuals from the Elliptic blockchain Chainalysis firm, argued that cryptocurrency offers advantages to donors who may not want their banking records to show that they sent money to organizations that might be perceived as paramilitary groups. So we can see here that, people do want to use crypto to help fund Ukraine and the people of Ukraine during this trying time where they're facing this invasion. And it's funny because, the government itself, they have this legislation that prevents them from actually accepting these alternative payment means, whether it be PayPal or Bitcoin or anything like that. But they're still setting up this bank account where they can actually get it in and then keep the funds on hand. And then hopefully, I think at some point, change the law so that they can actually put those funds to use. And then there are all these third-party, paramilitary groups and hacktivist groups that are just like, screw it, we'll take the crypto, we'll use it because we're not the government. We don't have to play by their rules per se. And so they're actually able to take the money in to the extent that the funds aren't getting frozen by, some of these platforms like Patreon or whatnot. So I think it's interesting to see the evolutionary shift of people throughout the world wishing to fund and show their support for Ukraine in crypto. And of course, to tie it back into our good old friend Tether, we can see here that Ukrainians are opting for Tether as banks suspend electronic cash. This article says in sum that Ukraine has suspended electronic cash transfers Kuna, one of their exchanges in Ukraine, shows that Ukrainian buyers are paying for Tether's USDT stablecoin. And as we all know, that coin is pegged to the price of the US dollar. They say Ukraine's central bank, amid an escalating war, is clamping down on digital money transfers in the country. The measure was enforced as the nation declared martial law. The National Bank of Ukraine, in its official statement, states, banks, issuers of electronic money, to suspend the issuance of electronic money, replenishment of electronic wallets with electronic money, and distribution of electronic money. While the country imposes new monetary restrictions in light of geopolitical turmoil, Ukrainians are now looking to crypto. Consequently, a well-known Ukrainian crypto exchange, Kuna, is showing that buyers are shelling cash for Tether's USDT stablecoin, which is pegged to the price of the US dollar. Michael Chobanian, the founder of Kuna, says, quote, "We don't trust the government, we don't trust the banking system, we don't trust the local currency. The majority of people have nothing else to choose apart from crypto." And here we can see that Tether, this is according to Crypto Briefing, Tether is trading at a premium in Ukraine markets. The USDT to hryvnia pair, I guess that's their national currency in the Ukraine, it was priced as high as $1.12 as Russia declared war on Ukraine. And the key takeaways are that Tether's USDT stablecoin is trading at a premium in markets, and trading pairs involving the hryvnia, UAH, is the ticker for their national currency in Ukraine. On Kuna, a popular Ukrainian exchange, which we just went over, the USDT UAH, that's their national currency pair, was priced as high as 33.4 UAH, which is equivalent to $1.12. So the takeaway from that is you're paying a premium, $1.12 worth of Ukrainian dollars, or Ukrainian hryvnia, however you pronounce that, for one Tether, which is supposed to be pegged at $1. So they also say that similar premiums were also seen on Binance and Exmo. Tether's USDT stablecoin reached prices well above $1 today on exchanges handling the Ukrainian hryvnia. On the prominent Ukrainian exchange Kuna, the USDT UAH pair was priced at 33.38 UAH, equivalent to $1.12. Since then, prices for the same trading pair have fallen to $1.07. So you're still paying well above, what the value of $1 should be in terms of Tether in Ukrainian hryvnia, right, as a result of this conflict, which I'm assuming is due in large part to increased demand for it. Just basic laws of economics, supply and demand. And just as a further expansion on that point, as we can see here, CryptoNews.com also reports that Ukrainians are paying Tether premiums as some desperate citizens ditch fiat for crypto. So they say the spike in demand has led to a USDT premium developing on the exchange. That was the Kuna exchange we're talking about. In theory, one USDT token should cost no more than $1, as the coin is pegged 1-to-1 with the greenback. Such price fluctuations are usually indicative of increased demand, which I was talking about earlier. It states, Google Trends data shows that searches for both USDT and Tether are both spiking in most regions of Ukraine, although interest in Bitcoin buying appears to be rising at a much slower rate. Google Trends data shows a moderate rise in Bitcoin-related searches in the country. So, interesting points. It's interesting to see that, despite all of its flaws and all of these shady dealings, Tether is still the most widely circulated stablecoin on the market. It has the largest market cap above its second largest competitor, US dollar coin, USDC. And then below that, things like UST, Terra, the Terra US dollar, and DAI, other. But all in all, I think that this information is really interesting. The connection between Russia, Iran, all of these countries, and otherwise nefarious actors that seek to avoid KYC, AML regulations, and try to clean their money through all of these kind of back channel sort of means, whether it be operating through Zug, whether it be using Tether, buying Bitcoin with that Tether and then trying to clean it, so on and so forth. I just think that the connection, it's more relevant now than ever, considering what's going on with these geopolitical tensions and the invasion of Ukraine. And I think it's even more interesting that the Ukrainians are rushing to something like Tether, despite what we just talked about in all of the shady dealings and the fact that it's not really backed 1-to-1, as they say it is, with actual dollar equivalents, right? they have commercial paper, quote unquote, that we don't really know much about, and Tether in their treasury has never truly been audited, despite the fact that they release these attestations, which are shady in and of themselves. I think that it's interesting that, Ukrainians, amidst all of the turmoil and the shutdown of its central banking system, are flocking to Tether. I think due in large part to the fact that it's the market leader in the space. It has the largest market cap, the largest trading volume, and it is the most widely accessible. Whenever you go onto a major exchange, you're more likely to see Tether pairs than any other stablecoin. Sure, you might come across a USDC pair or maybe even a UST pair, but almost everything is going to have a pair with Bitcoin or Tether. Likely, those are the two major pairs that you'll see trading on any of these central exchanges. So for people to get in and get out, I mean, I guess it makes sense when that's your only option. Of course, they're going to go to something like Tether. So I think that this was really interesting, pertinent information, especially now more than ever. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you guys think that Russia and Iran are using Tether and different digital assets to try to avoid sanctions from these Western countries? Let me know what you guys think, and also let me know what you guys think of, for any other video topics you'd like for us to address. We really enjoy doing this longer form content for you all. So with that said, thank you all for watching, and please, if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. That would really help us out moving on in the future as we seek to grow and spread the word of what we're trying to get across here in this channel. So once again, thank you for watching, and we will see you guys in the next video.